Well, we're back for another discussion on the state of MAHA, both as a policy and as a cultural moment that we're in. The movement, it means a lot to a lot of people. Kennedy defined it, but it was something, these things have been going on before him and they will go on after him. And to discuss this, we have Joshua Rayner with us. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, David. How's it been? How you been?
Doing well. So, last time we talked to you, you were telling us about how you were eating this strange raw diet that almost killed you. And then that
Yeah.
guy that was the guru behind that, I saw him. He did a drive-by tweet out on you after he saw our interview where he was saying, "Hey, you didn't do it right." But did you settle that all up? Did you get that raw stuff figured out?
Yeah, it's funny that the people in that, every diet sort of exists on top of the community of the people that follow it, right? Like it doesn't really exist outside of its members in many ways. And for some reason, whenever you leave something, then all of a sudden like the people in it don't really like you anymore because you left their thing. But for some reason, people just like they make up rumors. And one of the things is always so that diet, the primal diet, which is like this raw diet by Ogenus von der Plan, it's his construction totally. It's all raw meat and organs and raw dairy and raw eggs. And then there's this like component where you make green juice. And the green juice is supposed to be like very important, like celery and some other greens. Um, and everyone keeps saying that I didn't do it. Like I didn't do the green juice. And so I didn't do the diet right. But I drank it every day. For some reason they just said I didn't do it, but I did do it. But it's funny because they always say whenever someone like says the diet didn't work for me, they say they didn't drink the green juice because a lot of people don't, but people do also. And so I drank it, but it
It's
didn't
like some
work.
kind. It sounds like a mid 2000s M Night Shyamalan horror movie that you're in, where you didn't drink the green juice is why the creatures attacked you.
And yeah, and I can't escape the rumors. It's funny how
You brought a
you
plague to the village because you didn't drink the green juice.
I think like especially when it comes to health, there's always this like conspiratorial element where you're trying to figure out when you realize like how bad things are, then you try to figure out like why are they the way that they are? Like who made them this way? Like how could things be this bad? And so, of course, like people inevitably, and we'll get into this with the Maha stuff, but like they say, like this person is controlled, or this person is a shill, or this person is that thing, because no one trusts anything. And if you've ever in your entire life been on the end of any kind of conspiracy where people are just like making stuff up about you like whole cloth, you're just like, where did you get where did you get this from? Like, I could be like looking at the green juice in my own hand right now, and someone would be like, you're not drinking the green juice. I'm like, it's right here. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's part of the digital age too. People just don't know what's real anymore, right?
Yeah. And of course, it's not only that, but we live more online. And so there's a greater distance both like physically, tangibly, in any conceivable way from us and the subject matter.
So, and there's a religiosity tied into diets, and you can't really escape it. I think that's why all the religions always have a usual diet, right? All the
Yeah,
religions of the ancient past always had prescribed, most of the time, some type of prescribed dietary, what's good and what's not good list, and they also had a certain ceremonial rituals and rites surrounding how you would prepare food and how you would eat food. All of that is tied into, I think it's a vestige of our cannibalistic origins. Like if you look anthropologically back into our far past, it seems like there was a common um, kind of primitive cannibalism, right? That a lot of different people groups developed emergently, kind of maybe in one place, but perhaps kind of at the same time. Um,
yeah,
and the cultures that did not develop ritual cannibalism to satisfy kind of a kind of pent up bloodlust or something, or some kind of a need for collective purging and unification, tended to not survive as effectively as those that had evidence of ritual cannibalism. So it seems as if that kind of careful precision around what is clean and what is unclean, and how would we handle consumption, and what is good for the life force and what is bad for the life force, what is good for the community's hygiene, what's bad for the community's hygiene, are tied into some deep anthropological forces and who we are as human beings, which is why every diet has a religiosity to it.
Yeah, I mean, we need rules, right? That's how we pass on information from generation to generation. And
And we need
you,
scapegoats. Every diet has a scapegoat.
yeah,
What's the
this
scapegoat for the
this
bioenergetics, by the way?
some people say it's PUFA,
Yeah.
like
And then what would be the scapegoat diet clan of the bioenergetic? Keto people. Yeah.
well, in some ways because it is, and everyone says no, 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 the cult that I'm in is not a cult, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so to say like, oh no, 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 I'm the Ray Peat thing is the only thing that's like free from cultish behavior because we absolutely have cultish behavior. But the one thing that I've noticed and that you know, so one of the things I wanted to say was like, of course, you said every religion has like some sort of dietary prescription. And now, since fewer and fewer people have religion, they make the diets more and
Right.
more of their religion.
Right.
But just like every religion is very, very different as far as, and it's not even just what the specifics are, but how they handle them. A lot of diets are a lot more dogmatic than others. And so, if you take like, let's maybe just simplify this and take like vegan and take carnivore and take a bioenergetic perspective. Um, if you're a vegan, it's like it is so forbidden to ever eat an animal product that like to do so is like you're like banished, right? Like you've been exiled, you've committed the greatest moral crime possible. And so because it relies so heavily on this moral claim, it's like you're kind of like there's like no coming back from that kind of a thing. Whereas on carnivore or a keto approach, they might say that, you need to avoid carbohydrates like the plague, and you need to avoid plant foods. But you can cheat like as much as you want as long as you sort of like acknowledge that like that was bad,
Yeah.
right?
It's still a sin ritual. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and like if anyone has ever been in a carnivore like Facebook group, for instance, if anyone dares recommend a food that is not carnivore, if you recommend someone like eat a pickle or anything, you'll like your comment will get deleted, you'll get banned for like giving recommendations that fall outside the line. But people on carnivore cheat on their diets all the time. People on keto cheat on their diets all the time. And not only that, but they still identify with the diet. They go, I'm keto. And then what that basically means is I eat low carb on the weekdays and on the weekends I have like a cheat meal or something. And then, they might still get results until like I'm keto. And this one thing that I say a lot is that I think a lot of people who do the best on very restrictive diets do so because they do not adhere to them strictly.
yeah.
And so the carb binging is kind of saving your metabolism. Um, and if you think about the evolution of the carnivore sphere, for a lot of people don't know about it like prior to Sean Baker and Paul Saladino. Like they just never heard of it, and there's no concept of what such a thing, of that if such a thing existed and how it functioned. And it was primarily, referred to as this like it was called like the zero carb diet more so than it was called carnivore, and it was kind of more of your like beef, salt, and water type of diet. It did not include organs. It did not include dairy. Um, and what's interesting is that a lot of people from that community say that when you actually try to make it seemingly more well-rounded is when you ruin the diet. Like if you start to eat liver, you ruin the carnivore diet, which, is so vastly different from the way that some people understand it now because the nose to tail concept became so popular. And you would think it makes more sense to eat this like well-rounded diet versus like just a steak every day. Um, and then if you see the fact that like take like a Sean Baker, who he's closer to like I just eat steak diet. he'll like cheat on his diet though. Like he'll, he talks about like I'll eat ice cream at my son's birthday and whatever, and he just like goes back to carnivore. And then you have like a Saladino type who started very, diverting from the diet so much that he had to rebrand and give himself a new name. But there's so many people who still like go through the world kind of taking on the carnivore identity while doing like a Saladino animal-based thing. They might drink a ton of raw milk and
I
they
think
might eat a
carnivore now means just eat a lot of meat,
yeah, yeah,
in your
that's what
diet.
it then that what
Eat
that's
a lot of
what it
meat.
has become to mean now.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm saying is like there's tons of leeway to do it, but you still sort of like put your stand on that it should look like this more tightened up version versus like the bioenergetic approach. What you see the rate, and this is one of the reasons why I just like find it the most interesting is from the Ray Peat perspective, because first off, he didn't come up with bioenergetics, right? He sort of came into this school of thought and developed it much further. And he was building on the work of all these other Gilbert Ling and Broda Barnes and all these people. Um,
And like people, they all had different, like Rhoda Barnes had a kind of a lower carb diet that he recommended for his thyroid patients and stuff. So, but
right.
yeah,
Yeah,
he
they all
was, yeah.
there was tons of variety. And that's the thing too, is like if you're there is no, it's like a meme, but there like is no repeat diet. The goal is to get the effects on your body.
Mhm.
Like you can eat a ketogenic diet, and if you do it in a certain way, you are peating in a sense, right?
Mhm.
You just, you have to work with what gives your body the reaction that you want, the response that you want.
Mhm.
And so within that is like, um, you see people eating all different kinds of foods and experimenting with all different kinds of foods. And you can kind of eat whatever you want as long as you sort of like reify, I'm working on the metabolic rate.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I find more interesting is it's not, you're not a slave to the food
But
choices.
it's a more but the religiosity is that you have to show your doctrinal math of homework about how you get to how your particular thing is helping your metabolic rate.
Sure. Well,
Right? You always
yeah,
must show the class. What is your math? Show me your math. How does this help your metabolism? If you
there is
cannot
that.
answer that question,
Well, there's also
you're a
just like
heretic.
vibes based peating. You're
Yeah.
like, I was just really craving this thing. And that's kind of how I approach it myself too. And it's like if I get the results, that's all that I'm
Hmm.
really concerned about. And so a lot of people who like are off put by the Ray Peat community for whatever reason, they try to like identify, what the sort of um what the forbidden fruit is of the diet or what the kind of like evil element of food, whether it's PUFA or some other thing. But I think what the great thing about it is we're identifying that there's all these factors that are anti-metabolic and we're just trying to combat them.
Hmm. It seems like within the health community space move, PUFA is the villain of the general diet or landscape nutritional landscape of the West for the Ray Peat community. But I would say maybe the heresy from the health space move for the Ray Peat community would be dramatic reduction of consumption of carbohydrate. Right? That really is kind of the whoa. You're leaving the plantation here. What are you doing? That's going to harm you. And then and there's a kind of mimetic rivalry with taking people like Sean Baker and say, hey, look, his blood work or whatever. Or, he's so stressed out. I know he's spazzing and eating ice cream whenever no one's looking. There's this kind of cannot accept dogmatism, which is totally not Ray P.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
absolutely.
know what I
There
mean?
there
And
very
that's
much is
do
this
not do low carb or else you've lost. You're
yeah,
cheating.
well,
You're losing weight, but you're not going to be healthy. And you live to 100 years old on low carb. That's a fluke. There's only one way your metabolism can be humming happily in long life, right? I mean, that's generally, I would say. Would you not agree that that's kind of the heresy to make in the health space world for the repeat people?
well, yeah, from the Ray Peat people, it's
Yeah.
it's very anti-keto and low carb in general. And, but the reason is like, it's just kind of seeing all these people run into problems.
Hmm.
And and not only that, but most of us who are in the repeat community have already been low carb and we ran ourselves into the ground somewhere.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but like, okay, are you familiar with X Fat Loss on Twitter?
Yeah, yeah. I've seen
Yeah.
his.
So
And
like his, I've been talking to him a lot lately, and it's like he really can't figure, he has already lost so much weight, but he still has a lot more to lose. But the most success he's ever had is on like a pure heavy cream diet,
mhm,
where he like just drinks heavy cream for like 90% of his calories.
mhm,
And his TSH, his thyroid stimulating hormone, is lower than like all of us Peters.
mhm.
So his thyroid health is probably in a really great shape, but there's still something else in his metabolism that's not working right because he's still very overweight.
So it's like redirecting to reverse thyroid or something else.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know. That's the thing is like when people try to reduce the metabolism to calories in, calories out,
Mhm,
it's just like, so I know people who say like, oh, I don't, a big part of the problem is people say the same words to mean different things. And so someone will say, I lost weight and I wasn't in a calorie deficit. And what they mean is I didn't restrict my calories. And what the person who hates that they said that hears is you're defying the laws of thermodynamics. And so they're just meaning different things. And I think that's a very big problem, especially because you have people who already kind of find themselves on opposing teams. And if when it comes to health, it's like there's really no benefit to me proving you wrong if that exercise isn't actually showing something that is going to benefit you and other people, right? That otherwise you're just like battling with each other for bragging rights.
well, all of these things are really, there's a flip side. The positive side is people want to have joy, they want to have vitality, they want to live an abundant life, right? And they know they can look back to their childhood or some other part of their life where they felt more alive and hopeful and excited and healthy and mobile, and things go awry or whatever. And so it's like a big giant collective whodunit story. What happened? It's like a detective story, right? Who, like you were saying earlier, what caused this to me? What's happening to us all, right? And so underneath that layer is the deeper meaning of like fear of death, death anxiety. I don't mean death anxiety as in like fear of an acute death, like you slip off of uh, like a cliff or something, you're afraid you're going to die. Like that kind of fear of death is obviously kind of normal and healthy. But I mean, like just this latent fear of like, I have a finite time on this earth and I want to crawl. If you're on a conveyor belt headed towards death, you're like a Looney Tunes character trying to crawl, upwards past, opposite of the conveyor belt's momentum, trying to resist that, right? And then the Ray Pete, kind of offers this vision that he's built on with other folks, like you mentioned earlier, that says that the human body is not meant to decay, right? And so there's a very Christian, it's a very Christian subtext to this diet. I mean, honestly, where it's like the best is yet to come, right? This idea of like the golden age is ahead of us, not behind us, right? This in the ancient world before the Western world that we have, which is Christian, we had this sense that the golden age was behind us. So it's kind of in keeping with the individual memory of your metabolism from your childhood, and everything kind of declines through stress or whatever. Um, the best is behind us. The golden age of our society was behind us thousands of years ago before the Titans or whatever. But when you have um, you know, this Christian framework where no, the best is yet to come. The future is going to be greater than the past. The garden is the beginning of creation, and the city of God coming into the garden is the culmination of creation. Now there's this expectation to wrestle against death, right? And so that makes an interesting kind of dynamic that the bioenergetic world is kind of playing with. And then you have this overall within the dietary world, and I didn't know we were going to go here, but it's fun to talk about it. But you have this kind of general, you know, people are afraid of social death, right? It's like social death is almost worse than physical death, because social death is like living death, like you're ostracized because you're ugly or you're sick or you're unhealthy or you're moody or whatever. You can't get your mood right. You're too low energy. You're too depressed. You can't find a healthy, uh, uh, you know, um, you know, mating opportunity to marry and have covenantal bliss and all these things. So people have all these kind of like social death anxieties that are mixed in within the nutritional and health space that I think are part of this whole drama that we're playing out.
Well, yeah, I mean, that there's a reason why people kill themselves is because they find the physical death to be better than the living death that you're describing,
Yeah.
right? And there's that escape from there. And that's you can never avoid um, the mimetic concepts that are attributable to all these different belief systems or approaches or outlooks on what it is that you're trying to accomplish with any given strategy. And that's why I mean I just find this, I mean, fitness itself is very enjoyable, but what underlies it is the biological system, and that's like where nutrition is in many ways the fundamental layer because you're really dictating the state of the organism before it can do any given activity. And I think that's why so many people are drawn to nutrition, whether someone makes it their profession or just a hobby or, just some because they're trying to change their state, their reality. And anyone who has really, well, you mentioned like where did it all go wrong? Most people felt, you know, everyone had varying degrees of health, but most people felt much better when they were a kid than they do now, right?
Mhm.
And so it's like we know that it can be better, and then we feel that we've lost something, and we just don't really, like you said, we don't really realize how it all happened. And one of the greatest feelings you can possibly have is realizing that you can get that back and potentially, like you were saying, have something even better than you had before. And a lot of people, you don't, you won't know that until you felt that. And that is what stimulates all this kind of not just optimism, but curiosity of trying to get there. And that's, I have felt, I very quite often feel like I'm a different person at different times. And I'm always like trying to like identify how that version of me was existing versus this version of me. I'll have a day or days or weeks or months where I'm just like I was just crushing everything. I was just on top of the world. Everything was like going my way. And other times you're just like, man, I really screwed that up, or like, why was I just sucking so much during that time? And then when you've actually taken on an intervention and you feel the difference, you go, "Oh no, there's really something here. There's really something here." And that's where you really find value to something. And that is why people get so overly dogmatic in nutrition because they try to diet and they got the initial high. And if the diet isn't truly based in something that has longevity to it, and it's just that initial high, they will feel so tied to that because they think I need to get it back somehow. I need to do it harder or I need to go more extreme, and they kind of spend years clawing back at something which they'll never reach again.
Mhm. Mhm. And people get high off of the notion of doing of achieving a secret knowledge or experience with other people, right? And that's the right. That's what makes it tribal, right? It's like we all unlocked our thyroid to level 42 or whatever. It's like it's like that experience of doing something together, right? That other people in the world around you don't understand, right? And um, and that's what makes the repeat in the bioenergetic world is very subversive and contrarian. Low carb used to be the top contrarian thing.
Well,
Because 80s you had low fat, I guess, but then you had the 90s and all this, and it's like low carb starts off with Atkins, and people were just like, everything was just all, and it still is all about bread and grains and corn and crap like that. And then, low carb people were like the edgy contrarians. And now, you know, boomers got on board with the low carb thing because they saw results. They were able to lose some weight and stuff, maybe, and so everything went really keto. Keto became the kind of, it's still not the establishment, nutritional paradigm, but because of the power of the big food companies and everything and how they control health. and government.
But keto is basically the recognized opposition stance.
Right, right. And now you
And
have this, and then you have this bioenergetic thing, which looks like this subversion of the subversion, you know? So it's like,
right.
what is this, you know?
Well, so that's what's been interesting is that we were able to shift, maybe not like you said, the mainstream established accepted position, but we were able to shift enough of the population into going saturated fat is not bad, cholesterol's not bad. You can eat
You're talking
meat.
about the keto world when you say
Yeah,
we,
well,
or yeah,
yeah, well, when I say we, I kind of mean
paleo
like
world or something.
yeah, I sort of came up as like through the paleo world.
Yeah, yeah,
And I still in many ways think of my current interventions as still having some kind of root in that, even if at this point it's fairly separated. And um, so the like the paleo movement really gets to take, I mean, you can always go, well, this came before this and this came before that. Paleo is what got big enough first because, Atkins is like the way a lot of these diets go is like this is a weight loss fad. You do Atkins to lose weight. You're not like, you don't just like
yeah,
live
yeah.
Atkins. And paleo was the first thing to sort of counter vegetarianism as a lifestyle
Hmm.
that goes, these are the foods that I just eat in general. This is my diet like for my life. This is the way I approach food as a general
Yeah,
framework. And then so when I say we, it's like we're all, I feel like many of, I mean, I was quite literally like a part of, I was in the paleo world. Um, but anyone who has been within the health and fitness space for a while and has been on kind of this side of things, I kind of like I feel like we all sort of fit into a we of sorts. But I mean, if you're Ray Peat or you're a keto carnivore, you're still telling people that saturated fat is good. So in that sense, there's still this common ground. And so yeah, we were able to get so many people to totally flip on saturated fat. Now, when you go have a conversation with somebody, the chances that they are going to affirm what you say about saturated fat is fairly likely. And especially when you see the MAHA movement is very much like paleo-esque. Maybe not explicitly keto, but there's still a very heavy anti-carb and most specifically anti-sugar angle to all of this. So what I was getting to is that where saturated fat used to be the satanic element of diet. It
right,
is clearly sugar now. It
right.
is
Sugar is the
clearly
last
sugar.
scapegoat. Yeah,
Because I will, on social media, I will see all of these MAHA type people in comments. I will go to MAHA events, and everyone is on board with meat being good and seed oils being bad. But still, the vast majority of them think that sugar is the devil. Sugar is poison, and they might still think I should avoid seed oils, but they will never treat anything as evil as sugar. And that'll be very interesting to see if we can get people over that one. Because in order to make saturated fat look better, sugar almost had to be demonized to take the place because
but
seed
a
oils
common
wasn't.
enemy of the low carb paleo world and the bioenergetics people mostly is the grains too. They hate the grain. Remember, that's another common enemy that they fight against.
Yeah, I mean,
You
grains
know,
are certainly an element of it, but like it's very easy to get like a quote unquote crunchy mom to go for sourdough bread because like you're sort of told like this is the natural version or this is the way your ancestors did
yeah,
it.
yeah,
And sugar to people is a white powder that was made in a lab. That's how they think, that's what they think sugar is. It's like they don't actually recognize that sugar just comes from sugar cane and it was juice that was dried,
yeah. And then
right?
they, and what I think it was Paul Saladino who will say there's not a lot of good evidence. Like I don't know, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I know he's one of those guys that's kind of he's come around to fruit sugars, fruit and honey, but he still cautions against industrial sugar
He'll still
because
say
he's
refined
still
sugar.
because he says and he bases it on what some studies or something that show that there's some kind of indication that refined sugar has something obesogenic or
Well,
something.
you have to you you have to think about who the messenger is and
Mhm.
why they say anything in the way that they do. And so Paul came Paul was a vegetarian before. I think he was actually vegan before he went to carnivore.
Hmm.
And then within a short amount of time following, like I don't think he had been carnivore for a year before he wrote his book and started selling it. And then I don't even think he was carnivore for a year before, after that until he started adding in a lot more plant foods. And um, so the way that like if you take Paul as a person, the way that he branded himself as Carnivore MD and really took on that, I mean, the cover of his book was half of his face and like half of like a lion or something, right? And there's this very strong, like primal, caveman, animalistic, I'm a carnivorous animal brand to it.
Hmm.
And then and that's why I'm saying, like, the animal-based thing, you can eat a lot of meat and a lot of animal products and still be getting like 50% of your calories from plant foods and carbohydrates. And it's like, what makes this animal-based, right? Like there's the word omnivore,
Hmm.
right? You're not a carnivore. Um,
Hmm.
like all of these words are brands. There's nothing wrong with them on its own because these all convey just like any word conveys ideas to people and they mean something within a certain context. But for his brand, from shifting from the carnivore is the most natural human diet, then he has to shift to animal-based is the most natural human diet. And you can justify all the fruit you want from a natural perspective. And then all of a sudden it's like sugar is just like this fine line because he would say like it doesn't exist in nature kind of a thing. And from there, it's just like, the person who's telling you that, take the raw diet, for example, the person who's telling you that you shouldn't cook your meat is telling it to you on their phone,
Hmm.
which, is like the most incredible technology we've ever seen.
Hmm.
And it's just like, it doesn't mean that some things that are natural can't be bad and some things that are
Right.
unnatural can't be good. But, you're just trying to find like, what's the logic being used
Yeah.
here?
I remember the first interview I did with Ray P, and I was learning about his stuff while I was interviewing him, with Tucker Goodrich, and he came from the paleo world like me. And I just remember, Ray was like recommending drinking lots of milk. And I was like, yeah, you mean raw milk, right? He's like, no, just milk. And I'm like, what in the hell? What is this? And then,
Yeah.
then you learn that everything he's always promoting the cheapest, working class option, white button mushrooms. No, you mean like organic,
Well,
holistic,
okay, so
natural, hand raised mushrooms that are organic with human feces and stuff. No, 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 just regular shit trash mushrooms, white button mushrooms.
there is nothing that people won't do this with. So, okay, you can have bread. Okay, you can have meat, but it has to be grass-fed meat.
Yeah.
You can have bread, but it has to be sourdough
Yeah, and
bread.
it becomes a rich man's trap, right? You know what I mean? It's like, good God, to spend that kind of it has to be cut. You can eat meat, but it needs to be killed freshly that day, or you can't eat it.
Right. Well, then, so what's funny is like as you get further away from like the more natural foods,
Mhm.
like that it still happens because, okay, so then you can have milk, but it has to be raw milk. And then I love this one. You can have Coke, but it has to be Mexican Coke, right?
Right.
Like it's just there's a meme or I wouldn't call it a meme. It's like an infographic where people are trying to say that Arm and Hammer um, baking soda is bad because it's synthetic, and then the natural one, which is Bob's Red Mill, is the good one. But actually, the Bob's Red Mill version has a lot more like heavy metals and contaminants to it, but it's natural because it's from the ground. And that I've seen that thing got shared thousands, and I mean, what I mean is I've seen it like show up on like individual cases like hundreds to thousands of times. And people just think that there has to be this like, no, 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 this is the good one or the better one of it. And it has to fit my preconceived notion that the thing that is more natural is always the better thing.
Right.
Every single time. There's
Right.
like without fail.
And that's kind of the I mean, there's different ways to call it, but one way to say it is like Edenism, where it's trying to get back to that perfect ancestral harmony of the past. Again, there's a pagan move there, which which rejects and has suspicion towards any kind of industrial, process that's gone on to the food or whatever. If you're producing milk in plastic gallons that's been heated and all that, Ray Pete, is not leading you in the right direction if he's telling you that's okay to drink, right? Especially skim milk. Well, that's not how it is in nature. Or, white button mushrooms with pesticides and everything on it and plastic wrap. Don't eat that. Don't eat regular carrots that are not organic. But he was trying to, one of the things that really appealed to me is that I kind of see these things politically too, and he was trying to just give people the cheapest staples he could find as little subversive toolkits to kind of like anchor some health effects to like get your head back in the game to coordinate, because that's what he was always talking about. Is like, there's all these groups that are anti-authoritarian, but they don't know how to coordinate and organize. And if you listen to a lot of his interviews, that's all he's talking about is like, I want people to organize and destroy these murderous psychopaths some way, somehow, non-violently, some method. You need to develop a coordination, and you should, and the diet was kind of like the starting point to organize a conversation around it. It's a smart way to do it, since how human beings are, religion and diet kind of goes hand in hand. But he was always, but he was trying to take staple stuff. So it's like working class. If you had a local union, and you're part of the union, you're working for General Motors, you were going to get the white button mushrooms. You're not getting the organic stuff, the fancy mushrooms from the rich people's Whole Foods. You're going to get the regular gallon of milk. You're not getting the fancy stuff.
Well,
You're going to get the regular carrot bag.
yeah, that's the thing that I really, sometimes you just need to hear something in a certain way to illuminate something. And that is why, the term energy has gotten so mutilated by like new age hippie stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's gotten so like overdone. But within like the bioenergetic concept of having energy and kind of all the ways you can look at things like that, I forget the exact quote, but there was Ray said something about, when you behave in a certain way or you're more irritable, it's like you're doing it because you don't have enough energy to give, right? So you're actually trying to conserve your energy because you do not have a surplus. And so, like you mentioned, a lot of his recommendations would work perfectly fine for, a person from lower means who cannot afford go to Erewhon and buy a $40 gallon of raw milk. Um, but not just that, is that like what you find is so many people make, regardless of their financial means, they make the wrong decisions of what's actually moving the needle. They're
Mm-hmm.
worried about all this stuff that it's like, no, 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 that's not, don't, like Danny Roddy is great as sort of like a disciple of Pete. And, he would say, look, some people do better with raw milk and some people do better with ultra high temp pasteurized milk. Right. So you have to figure out the thing that works for you and stop trying to fit into this like you got to be on the hip trend of what people in the health sphere are doing. Do the thing that works. And a lot of
You think though
foods.
that, to be fair to steel man, that because I mean, I could get into it, and I don't want to go too far down this trail, but it just seems, because I've been in the bioenergetic worlds for a few years here after I met Ray and stuff, and it seems like for the most people, at least in my American contact, you look at all the people who have been doing the sad diet in various ways, various sad counter diets for decades, and trying to get them to just like sugar max is not, like, you're going to get way more effective results if you're just trying to help people solve obesity, for example. um, just doing a low carb thing, because it's, you take one macro down and you generally kind of leave the other ones kind of, you don't have to count them, so you're not worried about, oh my god, how many proteins did I have, how many. You just, it's very simple for the masses. You just, once you figure out what a carb is, you just kind of count, and you kind of generally find out what that threshold is for you, and you'll watch the weight kind of flow off. Now, people have a hard time getting back onto carbs after they do that long term, we know. But it gets the job done. A lot of people, when you do a low fat thing, then you have to, you got to watch, okay, well, what about how low or high is your protein, and how, so because it's like a lot more complicated. I have found, for folks to just, oh, okay, just swap it. All right, I'll just stop eating a lot of fat and just eat carbs in the vacuum of that. and it doesn't work. That's why, I mean, it's a harder thing because people are so built on the stress mechanism of the pathway that keto kind of exploits in an efficient way that it's almost like, in other words, do you think it's more stressful for your average, I know you're not really in that space necessarily, but your average 50-year-old or 60-year-old or 45-year-old to be think, okay, I've done decades of seed oils and all this stuff. So my body's really good at like free floaty fatty acids all over me, that. So let's just lean into that and do that in a healthy way with a healthy keto rather than trying to climb back up the mountain, reverse decades of like training your body to burn fat, right, and start burning glucose efficiently. That's a taller order, it seems like, when you've had. So in other words, is it more stressful to try to go back? I know this is kind of broad strokes, but if you have your basic system, which is what you have, your thyroid system, then you have the stress mechanism as your backup energy system that paleo worlds kind of lean into efficiently and try to clean up the mess around it. Is that not necessarily an easier way to skin a cat than the other pathway of like, nope, we're going to go all the way back and like force our bodies to like relearn what we should have always been on since we were little kids, and just like, because that doesn't seem to be as intuitively easy for the masses who are never going to be counting calories and counting macros and doing all the things that the those in the health space nerd types are going to do.
Well, I mean, there's a reason why low carb and keto got so popular is
Yeah.
because once you identify what a carb is, it's very easy to
Right.
avoid carbs,
Right.
especially, to a significant extent. It's not easy to avoid fat at all because everything is cooked in fat and it's invisible.
Right.
You can't see the fat. You
Yeah.
can see the bun on your burger.
Right.
You know, you
Yeah.
you can you
It's a
can
good
go to
point.
a
Yeah.
you can go to the restaurant and
Yeah.
instead of potatoes, you can get a side of fruit or a salad.
Right.
Right? It's just easy to do that. And so yeah, you have a very good point, both from just the ease of adherence to it,
Yeah.
because your brain goes, I just don't eat that if it's a carb.
Right.
Um,
With the repeat thing, if people are always arguing about, do you need to do this much protein, little protein, high protein, middle? It's very complicated, and nerds will do that, and nerds will have fun with that, and they'll have their wars. But scaling it up to a mass revolution like what Ray Pete wants, I don't know if it scales right now. I think people maybe in a few generations, you know what I mean? Like if you can start raising up Ray Petey kids, and then they keep having kids, and then you know what I mean, you can get that passed down and start making that the mainstay. But right now, I think like it's actually, I don't know. I'm not trying to make a declarative statement here. I don't want to be a heretic of any community, but I just think maybe the when you're trying to mitigate your losses, so to speak, right? You know what I'm saying? And you're trying to like stave off. You got a bunch of sad, sick people, 50s and 60s, and then you talk to people like Chris Palmer, Harvard psychiatrist, doing ketogenic diet, and what's it doing? It's getting rid of the schizophrenia. It's getting rid of depression. It's getting rid of bipolar. You talk to my friend Dr. Thomas Seyfried. He's at Boston College. He's stopping glioblastoma cancers by stopping and getting people into a ketogenic state. And it's like I don't see that kind of intuitive, easy entry point into real healing effects with the bioenergetic world. And I know it's a much more kind of new, and it's got time. It needs to grow and develop. And I want to be a part of helping that. But I just wonder if you're a little smarter about it, that the MAHA kind of big picture view, do we need to accommodate a two-step approach where for the masses who have got decades, if you got an 18-year-old kid, that's young enough, you can get them on the repeat fundamentals and run them healthily through that. But you talk about people who've been poisoned for decades, and you're trying to get them to run sugar at that level, and then like try to like you said, what were these green beans cooked with? Was this poured with canola oil or butter? How does the average person even have the chance of knowing that? It's
well,
just
so that's like you're right there where it's the culture has to shift enough because what you're basically banking on is the average person has to have some semblance
mm,
of vague understanding, right?
mm,
There, it has to have the mimetic power
yeah,
where the average person has to have an opinion
yeah,
on the food itself.
yeah,
So for however many years, it was oh, cholesterol give you a heart attack kind of a thing, right?
yeah,
And then at a certain point, now we're seeing this popularity of that that we want to call the paleo-ish, low carb-ish perspective. And now enough people, if you start talking to them, there's a resonance because they're like, oh, I've heard that before, right? Like there's a what's that saying, like you tell a lie and it goes all the way around
It's
the
the
world.
network effect. It's the
Yeah.
network effect.
And at that point, that's why memetics are so powerful, is if you just repeat something enough times, everyone just believes it and understands it. And then you can build
Yeah.
on top of that. So it will take a very long time to shift things in a different perspective with the repeat thing. And there's a reason why whenever I recommend it to someone that I would
Hmm.
consider more of
Hmm.
a quote unquote normie, I'm not trying to be. And the thing is, Ray Pete as like a concept and as a person, like, is not like easily accessible. You can't just like, oh, what's the Ray Pete? It's like, no, no, no. You have to read a bunch of his books, and then you kind of have to like
Right.
absorb information on all of his articles and
Yeah.
other people's podcasts that had talked about him, versus like a simple diet. Like, what's the diet? And
Yeah.
so what you're really banking on, and so what I always do is I always tell people to get Kate Deering's book.
Yeah.
You familiar with her?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So she
I've
wrote the
read that
book.
book. Yeah.
Yeah, she wrote the book How to Heal Your Metabolism.
Mm.
I just recommend that book to people all the
Yeah.
time. I said, don't worry about it. Just read this book. And it's much simpler. It's
Yeah.
much, much simpler. But you're very right though, that weight loss is a very important part of this. And so some people can go from the low carb weight loss and then roll into a more balanced diet and not regain the weight. But so many do regain the weight. Like a close family friend of mine lost 60 pounds on keto and then just gained it all back,
Right.
just all of it back.
Right.
And so you say, like, does that work? Well, it worked for a time, but did it actually work if the results aren't sustainable and
Right.
after the fact, they're worse off than they were before?
See,
And
that's why I want the best, smartest minds who understand the paleo. That's why I'm talking to you. You're one of those guys, right? So we got these best, smartest minds who've done years of work in the paleo, low carb, carnivore world and are open minded, and that have also done the bioenergetic stuff, and they know both backwards and forwards, and then can synthesize something that's actually coherent, right? That translates between the worlds. Because I've done bioenergetic stuff for 3 years, and I've gained weight. I have not. People can watch the videos of me talking about keto and carnivore back, and I looked a lot thinner than I do now talking about Ray P. I've never recommended to my audience, just to be clear, because I know the hypocrisy that would look like. I've never recommended them to me directly. I've never directly recommended that they do this approach to lose weight because it hasn't worked for me. I've brought on people who talk about it working for them in their weight loss issue, or I've brought on people that talk about it, and I've talked about it in other areas of, like, having energy or mental health and all those other benefits that you can see. But it has been, in terms of 3 years of trying Ray Pete's direct recommendations to me and every other person's spin on it, it is not. And as someone who has spent years working in the keto carnivore world, it's night and day difference. Like when I did
so
the keto and carnivore thing, if I had stayed on that for the last 3 years dogmatically, I'd look I'd look like a fraction of what I look like now. And, and I'd have energy in a different way, and I'd have stress probably from all of that. So,
So okay, so
but
let me ask you
yeah,
this. Let me ask you this. Have I know you had anabology on your podcast.
yeah.
Did you try the honey diet in any way?
Yeah, I've tried it, and it's interesting. It's a little harder to do. I think that diet. I mean, it's a little. It's just it's harder, and I haven't given it a month of time to do it. But one of the reasons why is it's hard to do for working people, self-employed people who are on the go running, because you have to kind of like get in a lot, and maybe you've got a lot more variants. You can explain different versions of it that work, but it's like you got to get so much sugar, in before 12, and some people are just fasting in the morning because they're doing something else.
So this
It
is
just
like,
gets it just gets complicated.
sure.
Low carb is, what to do. You cut it down and it
So
works.
I'm very excited about this for a reason, because I think there is so much ability here um, to make this work for so many people.
Yeah.
And I not only do I think it's actually very easily implemented, I think it both has a lot of convenience to it, which is going to help to with adherence, and it has leeway in what I would say is like when you cheat, it's less detrimental than something like keto.
Right.
And so you have a lot more flexibility here. And
So
so
are you suggesting that perhaps the honey diet is one of those big tent kind of opening that will bridge the gap between the
I
keto world
really,
and the
yes, I really
repeat
do
world?
think that this is going to change things. And if you're on YouTube, this is
Yeah,
blowing up like crazy.
really.
And so I've been just putting out continuous content about it. One, because I find it so interesting,
Yeah,
and two, like people are getting crazy results on this, and they're eating it up, so to speak, of like
yeah.
wanting more of this. So I really think, and what's been interesting is you're seeing this colliding of worlds that I feel like have never really collided before. And so what you're seeing online right now, especially in the YouTube world, is you're seeing like Ray Pete has already had an influence on the community as opening up to sugar.
Mhm.
None of this would be able to happen right now if it weren't for Ray Pete and the followers of Ray Pete. Because we're not there yet, but we've already made incredible strides in, for lack of a better word, normalizing sugar.
Demystifying it,
Yes.
taking it down a notch from fear.
And so because of that, then you have if you know Cole Robinson.
No, I'm not.
So
No.
Cole Robinson became like well known because he had the snake diet,
Okay.
which was like extreme fasting.
Oh, is that the one that talks about drinking a lot of he does a lot of electrolytes and stuff?
Yeah,
The
yeah, he has
snake
like his
juice?
snake juice thing,
Yeah.
and he yells at you and calls you fat and tells you to stop being fat. And
Mhm.
he had done that for years and years and years and years from a fasting, low carb keto perspective. And sometime in the last year or two, he kind of like totally flipped and was like, "We're gonna do it all with sugar." And I think it really aligned with the popularity of the honey diet. I don't know if he was inspired by it or he saw it. It's basically he calls it the sugar diet. It's the exact same thing. It's the exact same diet in like every conceivable way. But because of his reach of out of this like, the more esoteric Ray Peat world, it's just weight loss. And he's reaching a lot more of the general population.
Mhm.
And then what you're doing is you're getting Durian Rider and the Freely the Banana Girl and the high carb vegan side. And all these different approaches are just kind of like have all collided and something like truly magical is happening right now. And I think this is going to drastically just like vault forward the nutrition world, the weight loss, and once because all of this, you know, I
Well, tell
think it's
people a little
important.
bit about the, not to go off, but tell people a little bit about the fundamentals about what makes it so flexible, how you interpret this honey diet.
Yeah,
Because I was
right.
just going
So
back, I had anabology on it. What is it? A couple years ago now? I don't
you
know.
had him on last year.
Yeah, last year. Okay, and he talked about it, and it had not taken off yet. He was just kind of thinking about it. I guess he had been doing it himself, and and now it's getting more exposure now. But and I just remember his original thing saying you got to eat a lot of sugar, fruits and honey by about 12 or 2 o'clock, and then like fast it all off right till like 6 or 7, and then like eat a big dinner that's kind of lean keto, kind of right, like a pound of
Yeah.
meat or 2 pounds of meat, you
So
know.
I
That,
wanna give Anabology a lot of credit here. He's a friend of mine, and he put things in a perspective that really uh, made things click for me. And I kind of want to say like how I've kind of used what he did, and it sort of brought me back to some stuff that I had done previously, and then with kind of consuming a lot of this other content, this is the kind of way that I really think it's ideally done. And so both this honey diet and sugar diet thing, just to not confuse people, because I want people to be able to walk away from this and like have some actionable steps. The basics of it is you're living off of fruit and sugar on a day-to-day basis from when you wake up to the rest of the day. You want your body to consume um, fructose specifically, right? When you eat sugar, your body's getting fructose and glucose in a 50-50 split. So there's a reason why it's done with fruit and sugar and juice and honey and maple syrup and not starch, because starch is just glucose. This is going to increase the rate of your metabolism while causing fat loss, as opposed to a low carb approach, where you will lose fat, but your metabolism will slow down along with it. You are stimulating your body, you're increasing the metabolic rate by continually eating fruit and juice and sugar all day long. So you are accomplishing the specific, um, how would I say this? You don't eat protein, you don't eat fat, you don't eat starch. You eat fruit and sugars. Then for dinner, you have a very lean protein source, and you can have like non-starchy vegetables. You can have zucchinis and some cooked greens and stuff like that.
Like a
So
low
what
fat, low carb diet for
low
dinner.
fat, low carb diet for dinner, but you can still consume carbs from the fruit if you'd like. And this is where I think like
At dinner time, or are you saying after, or
yeah, well, you can have it at dinner if it goes along with your meal or afterwards. And
yeah.
this is where it's like, taking the inspiration from anabology and really running with it. And this is what I have been doing. This is what Cole Robinson has been doing. This is what Mark Bell has been doing, and he got it from Cole. Mark Bell has been a very large influencer for a very long time. He's a champion powerlifter. He was in documentary Bigger, Stronger, Faster about steroids. And a lot of people really they like Mark, and they trust him, and
He
he's
comes
sort of
from the
just a
paleo world too, right? Or he did that, right?
he was like a low carb,
Yeah.
he had a whole thing about the war on carbs. So he comes from a more keto, paleo, low carb, carnivore perspective. Um, where I think this really like takes off is you recognize the importance of fruit and sugar as a mainstay of your diet. And so if your dinner is a lean protein and low in fat and low in starch, you're probably going to have a better time. I've noticed I sleep much better if I continue to eat, if I at least have fruit after my dinner. Um, and so what I have found is that, and this is where I think like, because ex fat loss, I've been talking to him and I've been trying to help him figure out how to lose the weight. And I think this might work a lot for you because I had experienced juice fasting a long time ago, like over a decade ago, and
I did
lost.
that. I did that too over a decade.
Yeah. And
Man,
did you
these
lose a
things
bunch
come
of
around at
weight?
the same time, don't they?
Yeah. Did you lose a bunch of weight and then gain it all
Yeah,
back? Is that what
yeah,
happened?
yeah. It's
Yeah.
like I did the juice fast thing for 10 days at a time and all that. Yeah.
So what's important here is if you like this is where if you understand the repeat thing, great, this will give you more power. And if you don't, just trying to get people to understand that sugar stimulates the metabolism more than anything else does. And so when I did the juice cleanse,
What about coconut? What about coconut oil or MCT oil while you're on keto? Would that not stimulate the metabolism and the thyroid?
so anabology is right now experimenting with MCT oil. And so to, again, I want to be able to like give people like just the um the actionable steps and just here's the advice. Don't worry about the specifics, while
Yeah.
also, giving it some grounding so people understand what's going on. Fructose and MCTs are both metabolized directly by the liver before it touches the rest of the body, whereas everything else you eat circulates through the whole body.
Hmm.
And your body releases a hormone when it sees an overabundance of calories in the liver.
Hmm.
And this actually protects from fatty liver. And it increases the metabolic rate, which will help drive fat loss. And it is tied to longevity and various other positive health metrics. And so the problem with the juice cleanse is that they say you're supposed to do, again, sugar is demonized in like every single nutritional sphere.
Hmm.
They say you want low sugar juices, so it's mostly green juice with like some apple and cucumber to give it a little bit of sweetness. So when you do a juice cleanse, you are in a severe calorie restricted state. So on the flip side, it goes pretend more like you are a fruitarian and you want the sugary fruits as much as you can. You actually can and should eat as much sugar and fruit as you possibly can. And what's going to happen here is you're going to lose the weight without having the metabolic detriment. Your metabolic rate is actually going to increase rather than decrease, which means if you ever go off the diet, if you ever just decide to stop it, or if you ever decide to cheat, you're not doing it within the context of this broken slow metabolism.
Yeah.
You're doing it with a very revved up metabolism that can handle whatever it is that you're doing. So I like to think about it
It
like
leaves you better than you were before is the theory here, right?
yes, and that is the whole point to do it. Because every diet works. Like losing weight is the easiest thing to do in
But
the world. It's the easiest thing to do in the world. The
right,
hardest thing to do is keep it off.
right,
And then on the other thing that's very important and sort of ties to that is how do you feel while you're doing it?
right,
And
exactly.
one of the reasons why I'm so high on this is because I literally feel high on this in the sense that unlike a keto carnivore where you're using your stress hormones, I have just bounds and bounds of energy
But
by eating
but
fruit and sugar all
but
day.
let's talk about the mechanics of it because it's kind of how rigid is the formula in terms of the time and the order in which these things are done.
So,
There for the audience's sake, the classic that your friend Anabology, who we've had on the show, it's fruit and honey till like noon or so, and then you fast, you burn off that glycogen, right? That's what he's saying.
so
And then,
I am
then
going
you
to
do low carb, low fat. That's what I'm trying to get.
I am going to leave honey anabologies like specifics because he broke it down, eat that until 3, fast, go to the gym. I think that's I don't think it's necessarily ideal, nor if it serves people to take it that way. So I am going to instead describe it in the way that I think is going to cut through any all the externalities and just get people the results. And the way I want to think about it is you can have don't fast at all. There's no benefit to avoiding food, to intermittent fasting, to waiting until you eat, to just eat as much fruit and sugar as you want during the day. No
Okay, so
starches.
let's stop that for a second, just to reiterate. So not you're not trying to differ with that, but you're saying that the results of this diet are not predicated on having that fasting window in the day.
Yeah, I'm completely ignoring that concept altogether.
That's not required for this to
No,
work, so to speak.
no, not at
Okay.
all. Because again, in order for you to align with your metabolism, you have to eat when you're hungry.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you're
See, that was the problem that I had. I'm going to tell you when I tried that honey thing. So you'd eat till 12 or 2, and then I'd be working and working, go to the gym and all this stuff. And it's coming around 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and I'm really starting to feel that like, good God, this has been
yeah,
too long. I mean, I'm a 6'5" man, not supposed
yeah.
to be. Some of these guys doing this. Look, I'm not trying to be mean, but if you're a 5'2" girl, man, I mean that's a different machine here, But when you're doing the high intellectual stuff I'm doing and physicality and throwing people off the top rope, that's a lot to be, taking that kind of a big guy and running them through a fasting period and you're running off of the fumes of some kind of, you know, marshmallow, for God's sake. I mean,
Yeah. So,
I'm just trying to say, so okay,
no, no,
go back to what you're
absolutely, absolutely. And so, this is why again, it's like I give anabology a lot of credit for kind of bringing me to this, and then, but it's like I always want to give my advice from what I like,
okay.
what works for me, and
Yeah.
what I actually believe is what are the proper take homes, like what is moving the needle here.
Mhm.
And so, um, I the way I like to describe it is I like to give people like, here's a tool. This is an object, and I want you to take this object and hold it, and this is something that you can have. And then here's another one. And this is another, and then I want you to know that you can use these differently.
Mhm.
And so it simplifies the concepts versus trying to explain all the intricacies of the mechanisms. So because I know how effective a juice fast, juice cleanse is, I want to give people the day of a sugar fast, a fruit fast. So take an entire day, and from the entire day, all you consume all day long, without anything else, is fruit and sugar. You don't need any protein, you don't need any fat, you don't need any starch. This is your number one tool to do this right, to lose weight and to increase your metabolism, to increase your insulin sensitivity. And we're gonna, this is what we're targeting here. It's a pure fruit diet. That's a certain type of day. I want people to think this is my tool. On any given day, I can eat a pure fruit and sugar diet. I can have all
Pause
the
for a second. What a lot of people, even within the Ray Peat community, would say, be careful about chugging orange juice. It's going to spike your insulin super high if you're overweight. Is that something you have to be aware of? Like, okay, you're saying eat fruit and sugar all day. Do you need to be pacing yourself as you consume it to like dribble it in?
Well,
Is that a factor?
so this is the reason why we want the fruit and sugar and not the starch is because because fructose doesn't need insulin. Fructose can go straight to the metabolism. Glucose needs insulin. And that's why, but of course, fruit and sugar are a mix of fructose and glucose.
But don't they say that orange juice spikes your insulin or whatever? I've heard that. You hear that a trope all the time,
Sure,
even in the bio.
but again, this is how stupid the general nutrition sphere is that white rice spikes your sugar far more than table sugar than I'm sorry, spikes your insulin way more than table sugar does.
So just for excuse my ignorance, but if there is no sugar, if there is no insulin response, then why is it spiking your blood sugar?
Well, no, so sugar is fructose and glucose. So the fructose part of it doesn't trigger the insulin response, but the glucose part does.
Okay.
So the reason why we want to pick sugary foods is because they are fructose and glucose. There really is no like pure fructose food. Like agave syrup is like the closest, but your body also does need some glucose to it
I
it,
see
it
what you're
helps.
saying. So
Yeah.
there's glucose still in orange juice and those other things.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, most people, your body will trigger an aversion if you eat too much sweetness. And so
Mhm.
that's why I say, like, don't do anything crazy. Just have as much as you'd like. Just think that I can eat all the food in the world I want, but the only food that exists is fruit, sugar, maple syrup, and honey.
Now,
So
now,
I can have
now,
a
now, anabology. I think he says he's in his original blueprint that I read, and I'm sure, again, I'm just going based. My audience has only encountered this a few times. The honey in anabology. Um, that I think he avoided table sugar, white sugar, and like is that something that should be considered on this or no?
well, I know that his kind of like prototypical diet was a pound of honey and half a pound of dates during his sugar window.
Mhm.
Um, and I just, again, it's like I'm inspired by his framework, but that's just not how I approach it or
You're
do
just
it. And
doing
so,
whatever sugar is.
yeah,
Okay.
and so like you can have a bowl of fruit with any fruits that you'd like, and you can drizzle honey over it, you can drizzle maple syrup over it, you can pour sugar over it. Just do what sounds appetizing to you. Pick your fruit selection. You can have watermelons, you can have oranges, you can have like what again, whatever sounds good, but just listen to your body. Like if you eat too many apples, it might like get your digestion kind of screwed up. Too much of this, too much of that. It's not like any of these certain nutrients or the foods are bad. You're just following the craving
So
of enjoy yourself.
so you're not in your advice. You're not telling people to avoid the starchy fruits like apples and bananas, or you are.
I mean, again, it's like, part of it is you have to experiment with it because for some people, they can eat, they can do the journey ride of 30 bananas a day and lose weight, no problem. And for some people, bananas or anabology said, and again, this is like why there's such a difference is anabology found that too many dates slowed the fat loss because dates have starch in them. They're like a starchier fruit. But I think there's a big difference between if you do a pure fruit sugar day versus you eat the protein at night as well. Um, and so again, it's like, you know, dates have a pretty good feedback mechanism because they're so like you can only eat so many dates.
Yeah, they're kind of
Um,
disgusting after
and,
certain
and yeah,
percent.
so that's why I say like just get out of your head. Stop
Mhm.
thinking you need to do something.
Mhm.
And all you like, and again, this is the most simple thing you could possibly imagine. You can have as much fruit as you want. If you're hungry, eat fruit. You can have fruit, you can have fruit juice, you can have table sugar, you can have maple syrup, you can have honey.
Mhm.
Those are your options. Basically, have at it. The chance that someone is able to screw something up with those confines is like very, very limited.
What about like gelatin and coffee? Is that a factor for you, or do you think that doesn't?
I think that some people could be fine with coffee, but because coffee does stimulate the metabolic rate, I think it can drive hunger too much. And it's not that I think that they would then eat too much fruit. It's that I think they might be more likely to cheat on the diet. Because I know I've
Because
done
fruit is
experiments.
not very satisfying. I mean, that's the catch of this diet.
Well, it's if you're getting
I mean, think about it. Let's be real. The average young man, because I'm working with you on, I'm just kind of
sure.
giving you feedback. The average young man in America would probably rather have a fatty ribeye and some, sunny side eggs and a couple pieces of bacon or some nice big robust breakfast to get them going than,
Sure, but
a
like,
bunch of fruit with honey on it.
but everyone likes fruit.
Right. Yeah.
Everyone likes fruit, but
Right.
it's like, so that's the idea is that, if it's enjoyable on its own because it's sweet, and if you eat enough of it, it actually keeps your cravings at bay pretty well. I've kind of come to this idea where it's like, for some time now, if I have just a jug of water and a pile of sugar and a pile of salt, you'd be amazed at the cravings you can keep at bay with just that. A lot of times, all you needed was just a little bit of sugar and some water, and your cravings are gone. A
Mhm.
lot of times, all you need was a little bit of salt, and your cravings are gone. Now, that's obviously not a diet. There's no nutrition there, but you'd
Is
be
that another
amazed.
thing that people should think about is supplementing salt while they're eating their fruit part of the day?
Yes, if you ever crave, if you ever feel like you're really craving starchy foods, that's a really good sign because our body associates starch with salt.
Okay.
So I usually have a little, like a spoonful of salt that I throw in my mouth, like first thing in the morning that I chug down with some orange juice. And you can sprinkle salt on your fruit, you can sprinkle it in your juice. But the important part is that you're avoiding all proteins, all fats, all starches. And so again, like I
You're
want
not
people.
touching any vegetables, no mushrooms, no
You
carrot
you you
salad.
you
You
can
just
have no, you
yeah,
can have vegetables that they're non-starchy, right?
yeah.
So like yeah, I think like dinner time is a good time to have vegetables, especially if you want something warmer. You can cook them. Just make sure that you don't use any
Why
oil.
why is it a why do you think dinner time is good to eat vegetables?
Well, I mean, again, like I on a recent of my own podcast I just did, the way that I've often thought about nutrition is think of everything in regards to performance and workout nutrition.
Okay.
What do you eat and when? Timing is very important. Do you want to eat like a giant pile of vegetables before you're going to go work out, or would you rather just have some fruit? What is digesting quicker? What is kind of giving your body this like energetic signal?
Okay.
And that's why it's like sugar gets you through your day, and then you kind of more nourish your body at night. And if you're not eating protein, then it might help more to get more nourishment, more minerals, and maybe some warmth and salt from cooked veggies. So you can have cooked veggies. You can have veggies as well, but just like the driver of the diet and of the metabolism has to be fruit and sugars.
Would you recommend for folks that they stay away from liquid sugar because of the tendency to kind of overconsume on
No, no, no,
accident?
absolutely not. Absolutely not. You can drink as much fruit as you'd like.
So what if you but
Drink as much, sorry, drink as
what if
much
you're getting
juice.
thousands of extra calories than you thought because you're kind of you're drinking
Well, again, we're
I'm trying
not
to
we're
run
not
through all the variables here.
yeah, so we're not restricting calories at all.
Yeah.
Your
Okay.
body is going to give you your feedback. Today I've already had this is a bottle of apple juice and this is a bottle of pomegranate
Yeah.
juice. I've already drank, 100 ounces of juice
Yeah.
already today.
Yeah.
Um, and so again, the point is fully unrestricted fruit, juice, and sugars. And then, non-starchy veggies are like fine to have. It's like again, this is a reason why I'm trying to frame this as a tool. This is a certain type of day. This is not your life. There's a day. This
Hmm.
day is effectively a day of veganism, a
Hmm.
day of like, it's not a raw thing, but it's like you're basically living off of fruit because you
Hmm.
want the starch. I'm sorry, not you want the sugar, you want the caloric content because you need to stimulate your metabolism. And if you avoid everything else, you'll lose weight very quickly. So this is like, again, the most powerful of the days. This will be the fastest fat loss. And for the people who are the most overweight, are probably can do the most of these days continuously. The
So
second,
okay,
yeah,
second.
the second type of day is the traditional, more anabology day. Without the fasting, it is sugar all day long, lean protein at night.
Okay, so you're saying do a day without any protein and then do another day.
Yeah, again, like I want people to think they have a toolbox.
Okay.
And I want them to think of them basically having a variety of days. And to simplify it, let's just call it three types of days.
Okay.
You have the pure vegan, high sugar, high fruit day, and you can have veggies and if you'd like them.
Mhm.
Non-starchy, you can have as much as you'd like for dinner. The second type of day is the same type of early part where from the moment you wake up until dinner, you can have as much fruit, juice, and sugars as you'd like. But for dinner, you have lean meat and vegetables. And you can continue to have fruit along that if you'd like. You can have fruit with your dinner, you can have fruit after your dinner. The important thing is you don't eat any protein until dinner. But and you make sure you continuously consume the sugary fruits all day long.
Do you think
And
milk is an important factor in this type of?
no, unless you're doing skim milk,
Hmm.
the importance is really, really heavily predicated on you keeping the fat as low as possible. And there's another reason to have the pure carb, like the vegan pure sugar, pure fruit days, is because by doing that you avoid any trace amount of fat whatsoever. You basically guarantee, aside from like a half of gram of fat in bananas, you're getting like effectively zero fat an entire day. Any protein is going to have some trace fat in it. And not only that, but protein is also going to cause a little bit of insulin resistance. So the fat loss is much faster without the protein. But if you go too long without protein, your body will lose muscle. But people would be astonished at how much they could avoid protein and not lose it for days at a time. So I regularly won't eat any protein for 2, 3 days at a time. And then I will have a very lean protein for dinner, like a big pile of shrimp. When you're losing weight, or I'm sorry, when you're not trying to gain weight and gain muscle, your body needs a lot less protein. So as long as you're getting what, the general recommendation is half of your lean body mass in grams. So if you're a 200-pound man and you're 20% body fat, that is only what 90, no, 80 grams of fat.
Hmm.
It's only 80, I'm sorry, it's only 80 grams of protein per day
Hmm.
that you need to not lose muscle. And there's a study um, that they did actually just within this year, so only in the last 6 months, where they protein restricted healthy young men
Hmm.
to that amount, to have like half their lean body mass roughly, and um, and they lost zero lean body mass over like a span of 5 weeks. And so if you go 2, 3 days without any protein and then have 80 to 100 to 120 grams of protein, like you're not going to lose muscle because your body's not being totally deprived of it. It's just not a steady stream of it. So a typical day for me on that type of day is I'll have fruit, I'll have juice, I'll have my sugars during the day, and then for dinner, I tend to choose seafood because it's so lean and it's very high in mineral content, and I really kind of crave that. There's the salinity to it, there's the copper in them, there's the selenium in them, and I'll have that with like maybe a side of fruit and vegetables. So like
But
uh, sh
you're still avoiding fat like the plague there.
I'm
Yeah.
still avoiding fat like the plague. And what I have found is if you eat starch, like let's say you were to eat white rice, I have found that the weight loss stalls on the starch, though usually you can maintain your weight on the starch. So just again, I'm trying to make this as simple for people as possible. I want people to walk away from this like they have two tools and three different types of days. Anything that's not one of these two tools is an off day. A day that you want to eat starch with your dinner, it could be okay. But what you want to think is like that is an off day and you go right back to it the following day. If you travel for work and you're going to a convention and for 3 days you eat a bunch of crap, fine. The next day you come right back fruit diet. Just come right back on it. So I want people to realize how important and how powerful these days are, and how important all you just have is the pure carb day and the pure carb with lean protein for dinner. You never eat protein during the day, you can have it for dinner,
Now I
and
have
it's
felt, and maybe I did it wrong, but I have felt when I've tried to do like zero fat days that you don't feel good going to sleep sometimes. Like
you're
don't
probably
men
not, yeah,
a
you're
lot
not
of
eating enough. You're
a
not
lot
eating
of
enough calories.
bioenergetic, yeah, a lot of bioenergetic guys have told me, it's important not to go too low fat for too long because for men we need those cholesterol based,
Well, so
hormones and
so
everything
I
else.
had a video about this, about like potential pitfalls and of nutrient deficiencies. Keep this all in mind. If you are someone who is going to follow this diet very, very strictly for 5, 6 days a week, where you have a balance of your pure fruit, sugary days, and then you have your days where you eat all the fruit until dinner and you have a lean protein. If you have one day a week where you eat a ribeye and some eggs for dinner, like you're going to be getting in plenty of fat and cholesterol. And another reason why I'm really big on shrimp is shrimp has like zero fat, but it's very high in cholesterol. And again, it's like this isn't a lifestyle. This is a weight loss protocol. And for the people who are more overweight, who have 50, 100 pounds plus to lose,
Hmm.
you can go much, much further on this than someone who is already, they're only like 20% body fat and they just want to like lean up. They want to
You can
like
go
look better for
further in
something.
terms of like longer staying on it or something without harm.
Well, it just, yeah, your body is going to be a lot more resilient to it because you already have all this weight of stores of fat on your body.
Hmm.
And you also have much faster rates of fat loss. Like people lose a pound of fat a day if they weigh like 250, 300 plus pounds.
Hmm. Hmm.
Whereas someone who is already like on a moderate weight or like, just not as lean as they'd like to be, they might be more like, 2 pound, 1 to 3 pounds a week kind of a thing. So there's a lot of variety in the type of person that you are and how far you can push it. I just like people to know that a pure fruit day is an incredible tool to just like throw whenever you need it to kind of kickstart weight loss. And you can do it for 2, 3 days at a time.
So how many grams of fat? Like what's the threat? You know how when you're doing low carb keto, you got to get like 20 or 30 carbs a day, and then you're kind of getting where you need to be ketosis wise. Like, is there any gram variance for the average day with fat?
Right.
If you
So
eat a
on
piece
the
of
on the
steak that
pure on
has,
the pure fruit sugar day, you're effectively getting like zero fat besides whatever trace fat is in fruits, which is practically non-existent. And again, it's like you want to do this so you don't have to track your food. And don't like again, it's eat all the fruit you want. Like if you notice that you feel cold, you're not
Mhm,
eating enough. If you
mhm,
notice that you're having trouble sleeping, you're not eating enough. You need to eat more fruit. You need to get in more sugars. On the days that you eat protein, pick as like basically don't eat anything that's fattier than chicken breast. Like try
so
to keep it like
yeah,
that
yeah.
low. Like so that on for the
And does it
entire
matter
day.
how much protein you're eating? Like you said, I guess it's depend on your weight again, but like a
Yeah, again,
pound of
like
protein at dinner.
yeah, you probably don't need to eat more than a pound of your protein type food. A
Okay.
pound of chicken breast, a pound of a lean meat, you can get like a 96.4 ground meat. You can get venison, which is super lean. But again, the leaner you eat it, the better. You're just like again, we're going for like effectiveness and rate of fat loss. And because we're keeping the fruit and sugar so high, your metabolism won't slow down. That's the play here. So I like a lot of seafood because it's very, very lean,
Hmm.
and you can cook it without any oils. You can do chicken breast. You can do 99 one ground turkey. I probably wouldn't eat above 10 to 20 grams of fat on those days. I try to keep it as low as possible
On the protein days.
on the
Okay.
protein
Sure.
days. And then again,
So
like
coconut oil is not a magic variable that gets out of the fat from
yeah,
what you.
coconut oil may or may not work within this, but
Yeah.
I'm ignoring it as a
Yeah.
concept.
Yeah.
Anabology is experimenting with MCT
Yeah.
oil. I just don't really think it's necessary for this.
Yeah.
I still think it's a healthy food and in generally pro-metabolic, but
Now, what did you
um,
say the third day was? Was that when you eat a little bit of fat?
yeah, the third day is basically like it ranges anything from basically an identical day where you have a lean protein, but you eat like white rice with dinner. It could be a day where if you want to have like a fatty steak, just take all the carbs out of the dinner. If you want to eat a ribeye and steak and eggs for dinner one night with some non-starchy veggies, don't eat any fruit with the dinner. Don't drink any juice with the dinner. Don't eat any starch with the dinner. That's how you're gonna like limit any potential fat gain from that meal. And then, basically from then on, it's like, look, life happens. That's why I think this is so incredible because if I know I'm going to go out, like tonight, I'm going to go have sushi with some buddies. We're going to go to the gym, we're going to work out, and we're going to have all you can eat sushi. So, one, on the bright side, one of the reasons why I tend to pick sushi is because if you avoid like salmon, most of the proteins are very lean. And the white rice is going to basically really kind of give me a little boost performance wise. And it's just going to stall my weight loss for like a day. And then
Mhm.
what am I going to eat tomorrow? I'm going to go back to eating like a low starch, high sugar, low fat day. But maybe you're going out and you're going out for pizza and beer with your buddies. And go do that. Go do like enjoy yourself. If you eat the fruit and sugar during the day, your metabolic rate is higher. You're gonna gain less fat from the pizza and beer at dinner, and then the next day go back to just fruit. If you're ever go out and have a all you can eat feast, go on out and just have a fruit day the next day, you'll basically like nullify any of the negative effects.
Hmm.
It's so powerful to use this tool. And I think that, what we'll see is, I have no idea if this is going to be like just the answer to everything, right? Chances are no, but it might be a very, very useful thing that a lot of people are trying now. And a lot of people in the Ray Peat community, because there's all this like balance to it, and I think that's very healthy. But
Hmm.
if you want weight loss, like use the tool, get the weight loss, and then you can go back. And if you use it in this bioenergetic pro-metabolic perspective, you won't get all the usual suspects of the negative effects that you get when you lose weight of your metabolism slowing down.
Hmm.
And that's what I think has really been discovered here.
Why
And
do you think what's behind like the Kempner thing about doing rice to make people lose weight, or these potato diets using starchy potatoes only to lose weight, and
so
yet
I
this fruit diet is the superior one in theory?
I think I just think this is faster and because of that more effective.
Hmm.
So the potato diet basically requires that you eat nothing but potatoes.
Hmm.
And so if you diverge from the diet, you're really not getting the results as much. The Kempner diet, which for people that don't know, is it's basically fruit, sugar, and white rice. It's basically a 95% carbohydrate diet, small trace protein and fat in any of those foods. But the thing is that is going to take a lot longer, and also the adherence is going to be much lower
Hmm.
because people are going to be way less like there's rumors that he had to like beat his his patients to get them to like, adhere to the diet. What we want you to not feel that negative effect,
Yeah.
and we want to be able to give you the freedom and basically the ability to handle a divergence from the diet. And I
Hmm.
think if you avoid the starch, and again, the starch can be a cheat day for you, but if you think of when I'm on my diet, I only eat fruit, juice, sugar, lean protein, non-starchy veggies, and always the protein at dinner because we want to get a hormonal effect of avoiding protein. A big part of the increased fat loss is protein restriction.
Hmm.
That's when I'm on my diet. I have those 2 days. Pure carb day, pure carb with lean protein for dinner. You have
What
two
do you mean
days
by
that are
2 days?
on.
Do you like to do them every other day,
No, no,
or
no. It just you have these are the 2 days in your arsenal. These are the 2 days in your
but how
arsenal.
many? How many? What if somebody just wants to do the other day all the time? It'll work
Okay,
just fine. Yeah.
if you do the lean protein every night and your weight loss is fine, then great.
But that's
Then you're
why
good.
anabology put in the fasting period to try to account for that. If
No,
you
no.
want to go every day, you have no idea.
I'm just totally ignoring his fasting thing. I'm
Yeah.
not like acknowledging its existence in the way that I think about this.
Okay.
Just because I never have used it, and I always actually felt one thing that I've seen is sometimes inevitably because I would go to the gym, you'd go be without food. The cravings that would kick in from the fasting would be so severe that people would overeat for dinner.
Mhm.
So, and that's why I'm trying to just get rid of all the noise. You have 2 days in your arsenal. Of course, life happens. You can always do what you want on a given day there out in the world. You have 2 days in your arsenal, the pure carb day and the pure carb day with lean protein for dinner.
Mhm.
No, both days during the whole daytime, no protein, no fat, no starch. And on one of the days, then you can have lean protein for dinner. And
I
that is, I just think, the simplest way to approach it.
I know that ex fat loss guy. He said that he was shocked at how expensive the fruit was on this. So let's steelman this some further, okay? So you've established a compelling, picture of what you think can help people. Now, what about the working class factor? You've got to be able to scale it financially for the average person who's not a tech bro living in San Francisco with a startup that's
Yeah.
using money laundering to finance high six
So,
figure jobs. Not that that's you. I'm just saying in general.
well, yeah,
There's a lot
no,
of
I
these
mean,
people that are doing all these fancy diets, but they can afford
I
them.
would be, I would be astonished if someone was spending more money eating nothing but fruit in a day than they were on what they're currently eating. You don't have to get organic if you can't afford it. There are cheaper juices from the store. You don't have to buy like the fresh squeezed whatever. You can get Tropicana or whatever. Just, as long as your body tolerates, it's fine. It's no problem. There are a lot of cheaper options in terms of the fruits, in terms of the juices.
What
You
about those
can
cheap juices that are not refrigerated? all
Well,
those industrial.
some of the juices are actually expensive, like Lakewood. Those aren't refrigerated,
Yeah.
but they're pasteurized.
Yeah.
And again, it's going to be like you have if it works, it works because the sugar is there, so we know that's going to be that's a big part of it. And the question is going to be, is the micronutrient profile of those juices going to be sufficient enough to sustain you? Again, I have a hard time imagining that someone is going to be spending more money doing this than on what they're
Well, when they
already.
get a lot of fresh fruits, it gets expensive, or especially if you do organic. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, so
It was like,
I eat a good amount of frozen fruit, frozen
mhm.
mango, frozen pineapple, frozen berries. I get fresh fruit. I do the juices. Sometimes it's refrigerated, but it's pasteurized, and sometimes it's fresh squeeze, and it's kind of also just whatever you can get your hands on. And also like sugar, that just like table sugar is cheap as a cheap form of calories. So you can always kind of juice up if you're hungry, and let's say some like you were stranded on an island and someone gave you a bowl of fruit, and this is all you can eat for the day. Well, but they gave you like a 55-gallon drum of table sugar. You're gonna really liberally load up the table sugar to fluff up the sugar and the caloric content of that.
Mhm.
But again, like all nutrition advice comes with like caveats, and every person has different resources and stuff available to them. But again, I have a hard time imagining someone is going to be spending more money on just eating fruit and juice and sugar than they would, whether they get
But it
some
would
meat and
typically
starch from a restaurant.
would most people probably typically want to avoid the starchy fruits to make the success, like bananas, that kind of thing, and apples and
Again,
pears.
I don't think I think that that may be
Because
what someone
depending on
has
the
to do.
because honestly, depending on the region you live in the area you live in, people live in kind of. I'm not trying to like poke holes. I'm just thinking through this. Like a lot of people live in relative food deserts when it comes to fruit options. It's like
Yeah, so
they go to
you can
their
go,
local store and they've got apples, bananas,
you can find apples and bananas in a lot of like corner markets.
right? But those are the
And
ones you kind of want to avoid, right?
oh, I'm not saying that. Some people say that like they do better if they avoid them. Maybe even if it's just for digestion, not for like fat loss.
Hmm.
Um, but I think if you're avoiding the starch, like the actual starches, not starchy foods, but starches,
Hmm.
and especially if you're doing it on a no protein day, you could probably eat a lot more bananas and apples and not have any. That's why, like, imagine telling people you can eat all the fruit you want, but nothing else, and then say, but you can't have that fruit and you can't have that fruit. As long as it's not avocado, which has fat in it, you're right. You're just going for pure sweet fruits. I'm not going to tell someone to avoid bananas and apples. If they find that they can't
Yeah.
lose weight doing that, then at that point. But I think people really wouldn't have much of a struggle with that. But you can also like in pretty much any gas station or liquor store, you can find orange juice. You can
But if
find
they're,
Tropicana
but
orange juice.
if I'm just trying to walk through this again, if let's say that the weight gain they have may be related to endotoxin, would the repeat argument play in that be careful about eating raw apples and bananas because that's going to feed that?
What I have found is on a very high fruit intake, it is clearing out my intestine like nothing else.
Hmm. Like as a
Now,
diuretic, or you mean like just
well, I
literally
know,
clearing out the
like literally,
endotoxin?
like I go to the bathroom a lot more than I used to, and I feel like my bloating is actually severely. I mean, my bloating has been decent for a while now, but like I feel much more empty than I used to when I
What
do
about
like pure fruit days.
when you do pure fruit days?
Yeah, pure fruit.
But what about those little fruitarians you see that have those little bloated pot bellies and little skinny
Well,
stickers?
fruitarians are usually very skinny, but they're not usually pot-bellied. Usually the pot-bellied ones are like the raw vegans who
Oh,
are
okay.
also eating like weird sprouted
They're getting like
something.
the chimpanzee gut kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, if you want to see an like emaciated person with zero body fat and a flat stomach, like go look at like raw fruitarians. Go look at Durian Rider, and they're not even fruitarian. They eat starch. Go look at Freely, the banana girl. Like these are people with very very flat bellies with a very very high um, carb, very high fruit, high starch diet. I think I just think you kind of need to be like if you want to eat a lot more starch, get yourself lean first. And I think in that process, it'll kind of really help regulate your digestive system. Because I went to carnivore because I wanted to alleviate my bloating, and it
Mhm.
worked. But the problem is that then your body sort of like you get like like the wrath of Khan. It just sort of like it comes back because you don't have a microbiome anymore
Yeah.
to combat with. If you ever eat anything a solid food again, or a fibrous food again, you'll run into big problems.
So, do you again, just to reiterate for folks who are interested in your ideas here, do you would avoid even gelatin and collagen? Those are I'm thinking of the sacred cows with the bioenergetic space for
Yeah,
those who watch the show.
I think that gelatin is likely fine in the sense that you can eat it when you're not supposed to eat protein because gelatin is very low in methionine and some other essential amino acids, which is what you are basically avoiding when you restrict protein that increases the metabolic rate. So I don't think your metabolism will slow down if you have gelatin. It might be best to have it on the days that you eat your lean protein for dinner. If you want like a warm soup, you could do bone broth with some, you could do broth with chicken breast and some cooked veggies in there. I actually eat like some like organic gummy bears that don't have any artificial colorings and have much more natural ingredients, and they have gelatin in them. And I seem to be able to lose weight fine eating those.
Is that your
Um,
product, Joshua's Cubs, available now?
I'm not even kidding. Like a few months ago, I was like, should I make gummy bears? Should I start a gummy bear company?
Now, what about Brad Marshall? Have you heard of him? He's a
Yes,
good
I'm,
friend of
I'm
mine.
a, I'm a big fan of Brad Marshall.
So he's got kind of something similar to this. It's I don't know what the latest is. He's been doing some other stuff, but he called it the emergence diet or the glass noodle diet, where you eat, but it's just all starches. So, well, with some sugar. And I said, why don't you just do it the Ray Peat way with the emphasis on sugar? I said, are you just mimetic? You have to do it the starch way. And he's like, no, I really think that there's some evidence that the fructose stuff, can be a little bit more obesogenic if you're using most of that as your fuel
You
source
know, I've
relative to
heard I've
starches.
heard some people say that they find fructose to be way more, lipogenic, more creating
Yeah.
fat, and others, I think like there's some variation, but there's also a lot of people
Is it
don't know.
genetic related? Like, is there
Well,
genetic?
so I think there's a lot of factors. It could be genetic, it could be previous nutrition habits and
Mm,
previous diet experience. Um, but what I think not enough people actually recognize like what it is that they are recognizing. So when someone says that I tend to put on more fat when I have fruit and sugar than when I eat starch, are they also eating protein and starch and fat along with the sugar?
mm,
And when the person says that I feel on the flip side, it's the same thing. Are you actually controlling for that variable by itself?
mm,
So look, if someone wanted to experiment with something different, again, like I'm not saying you have to follow my thing or you just do nothing. Imagine a day where you just ate starch. Go on a pure starch diet. See, I mean, people have success on the potato diet. Now,
mm,
I just think that the potato diet is working more prominently through the potatoes being so filling that you're satiating yourself and you have fewer calories. And so this is something that anabology did kind of, I don't know if I'd say he came up with it, but he brought it to my attention. I've never heard anyone else talk about this. But on my podcast with him, we talked about this, where you kind of have two sides of this metabolic spectrum. You have fructose and MCT oil,
mm.
and you have starch and stearic acid, right? So Brad Marshall is the starch and stearic acid side. The fructose and MCT oil side is actually making you hungry. It continues this hunger sensation because it's stimulating your metabolism. So you lose weight by upregulating the metabolism. Whereas it seems like the stearic acid and the starch side have you lose weight by increasing satiety. And so if you are eating a more well-balanced diet, then those foods might help uh, have you eat less on the whole.
Mhm.
And in a sense, they're both pro-metabolic, but there's the hunger-driven pro-metabolic and the satiety-driven pro-metabolic. And I'm sure anabology either already knows or will come out with more information on it about the nuances of what metabolically is happening. And again, I think all of what I would love people to do is experiment, but for the people who they need the most help, try to follow something else that someone's giving you and then try to get
Right.
somewhere before you like I mean I can experiment with all kinds of things because I sort of feel like I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so when I first started this, I actually was experimenting with a lot more starch. So on my pure carb days, I would eat fruit all day and then I'd have a giant bowl of white rice for dinner. or a giant bowl of pasta. And I wouldn't add any oil, I wouldn't add any fats. And what I found is that I felt good, but my fat loss was very, very slow.
Hmm.
Like, and of course I was also like, some weeks I'm a lot stricter and I don't have like a single day, which is like
Hmm.
considered like a cheat day.
Yeah.
So for me personally, I go, man, like for instance, I have lost like 5 pounds in the last like 3 days. And, some of it's water weight, but it's just because I've been way stricter and I've eaten nothing on 2 of those days. I ate nothing but fruit juice and sugar. And on one of those days for dinner, I had shrimp and a big pile of grilled vegetables. Um, and then all of a sudden, just like boom, dropped a bunch of weight suddenly. And of course, like, oh, you can only lose so much fat, but your body tends to hold water more when it's not losing fat.
And
Your
how are you
body's kind of,
grilling things without using oil again? I'm not
yeah,
Martha Stewart,
yeah,
so
I just have like this pan
hmm
which has
with
holes in
water.
it.
Oh,
No, 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 no. This pan just has holes in it, and I put it over an open flame.
okay.
So it kind of like chars them up a little bit and heats them up.
What
Um,
would be the working class the guy who works at General Motors equivalent of that? I'm sure he knows how to do a flame if he knows how to do
Yeah,
a car.
so well, for the protein, if you're thinking of something like cheap, readily available, convenient, no
Yeah, to cook.
preparation,
Yeah, to cook
well,
without.
canned tuna,
Yeah,
low fat tuna.
yeah.
Again, like
Or
then you
air
have,
fry. I'm trying to think of how to prepare zero fat protein
yeah.
meals for
Well,
the
I mean,
working class families. That would be
an,
like air
an,
fryers and stuff.
an air fryer is more expensive
Yeah,
than just cooking something over an open flame.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
when I say I'm kind of balancing the
like
income
convenience.
income and the American, working class. I work two jobs, eat
Yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah.
kind
And
of
that's
dynamic
why
that most people are in.
so you can get like pre-cooked shrimp
Yeah.
at grocery stores if you don't want to cook shrimp. Shrimp has like no fat in it. You can get canned tuna. You can get deli meat, sliced turkey breast. It can have like little to no fat in it.
Mhm.
You can have canned chicken. I've really never eaten much of that, so I don't know how low in fat is it is, but I assume you can get boneless, skinless chicken breast.
How
Um,
long do people need to avoid, like, how long is it like safe to avoid fat when you're trying to lose weight? Do you think people should eat fat at least once a week, some point? It's not
Yeah,
to
I mean,
over.
look, I think someone could very, very, again, your body has fat on it, right? Your body will be metabolizing its own fat.
Hmm.
So I think someone who's, pretty decently overweight could like go a month without eating like really any added fats to their diet. And again, if you eat chicken breast, if you eat some seafood, if you eat some really lean
Hmm.
ground meat, like you're gonna still get trace fat in there. Like it's not like it's zero, but you'd be surprised at how long you can go. But at the same time, it's like, if you just like not more than one day a week, eat something a little bit more variable. I mean, you're not going to run into any problems. But if you want to, like, a lot of people really want to like be dedicated to losing the weight, and they go weeks with being very strict, and that's when they lose the weight the fastest.
I know that Ray Pete was always recommending people not to burn fat. This is going to burn fat, which is right. Is that clear? Or is
Yeah,
this gonna upregulate the glucuronidation process that he always talked about? That
I think there's
he
a,
wants people to, for those who are not familiar, he wants people to excrete the PUFA storage from their fat deposits through urination, right, rather
yeah,
than
I
through
think
fat
I think
burning.
the way to avoid that issue is to make sure you eat enough sugar and enough fruit. If what some people might find themselves doing is they might be losing weight and they eat some fruit, but they're still under eating calories,
Mhm.
in which case the body is going to start triggering lipolysis and start breaking down fat for fuel. So I think the way to do this, like the safest, is to be like really make sure that you're not restricting your sugar and carbohydrate at all, and that'll help sort of prevent that
And I think
process.
it was Anabology or somebody was saying recently. I saw on X he stopped eating mangoes so much because they were causing slowdown of the digestion, right?
Yeah, he
Constipation.
yeah, he was saying that they were causing I don't know about constipation, but they were slowing his digestion, and he felt that the longer food sits in the stomach, the more it slows the metabolic rate. I There was a point when I was eating a lot of dried mango, and I think dried fruit. I think people, it's just best to avoid dried fruit. If you're gonna like eat candy, then a dried fruit's probably a good option. But like I wouldn't get like the bulk of your calories from dried fruit. I
Why is
felt
that?
that I felt that really like clogged me up a bit. I mean, there was times when I was eating like almost 2,000 calories a day of dried mango. So that's like excessive. But I'll have this bowl had uh, dried mango in it, and I was
Mm.
all the way filled to the brim. So that's probably like 3 cups of frozen. I'm sorry, not dried mango, frozen mango. It's like 3 cups of it, and I digested it totally fine. Um, so yeah, I mean, like I really think that this new kind of convergence of diets, and especially in regards to fat loss, is because fat loss is, I'm not saying fat loss is the most important thing, but it is treated as the most important thing, and because it often is the most important thing. And one of the best ways to
But your
get
body
medical,
doesn't act like it's the most important thing because it always wants to burn muscle.
crazy, right? Yeah.
So
And I
there's
just,
a little bit of a mismatch between our physiology and our social
well, again, I think a
content.
big part of that comes down to like what people's diets are like and what people's lifestyles are like, why that happens. Whereas a healthy person who's metabolically healthy doesn't hold fat on the body.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we're just so screwed up. And so in a sense, what
Well,
you're
they hold
doing
fat to the extent of, I guess, winter, right? I mean, that would be the evolution of us holding
for a
fat,
healthy
right?
person, yeah, sure. I mean, I think there are a lot of other, some people say that your body holds fat to protect it from like toxins in your system, which honestly, I mean, I know we've been going for a while, but if
Yeah,
we
yeah,
wanted to touch
yeah. That
MAHA a
would be,
little bit, I
yeah.
think this would be a good way to round this out.
I was about to
Um,
say we've got to give people something because we were going to talk about the MAHA as a political movement, and we've talked more about the cultural and dietary, which has
yeah,
been
no,
great.
I was thinking we were going to start more with MAHA,
Yeah,
but of course, one thing led to the next, and so if they're still listening, I do want to cover the MAHA stuff
yeah,
because I think
yeah.
I
Give us
think
a little nugget, and we'll do another show maybe down the road with a deeper analysis. I'll put Kennedy on here too, maybe.
yeah, that'd
I've
be
had
that'd be
Jay
something.
Bhattacharya on there. It's so surreal, man, when like half of my favorite podcast guests are like now like running for. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh shit, what? How does this work? You know?
Have you had Kennedy on before?
No, but
Okay.
I've talked to Kennedy in the past
Okay.
privately, and I've had Jay Bhattacharya, who's now at NIH, and the other one I won't mention until we make sure they're confirmed. So
Well, so I
I
was
don't. I had when you have the Wall Street Journal and these people come up to you and they're like, in an episode here, your guest here said, I'm like, oh God, now I just
well, I was actually going to bring that up, so I don't know if you want to talk about that or not.
yeah. Are you up for Senate confirmation? I don't want to get you in trouble.
Me, no, no, no,
Okay,
no. But someone's up for confirmation, and it was something I was going to talk about. So, in regards to MAHA, so if you didn't
go
want
ahead.
to,
Yeah, go ahead.
oh, so I think it'd be a really good idea for us to like do a little like recap of how we think MAHA is kind of going.
Yeah.
So and your input as well. And so it's like, okay, we've seen the ban on artificial dyes,
Hmm.
and that's already having changes. Like In and Out, I believe, just announced that they changed the dye in their pink lemonade or something to like a natural food dye. And so like that's a win right there.
Yeah.
Like one of the reasons why I avoid like the Haribo gummy bears is because they have the artificial colorings. But if you buy the German ones, which you can
Yeah.
get on Amazon,
Yeah.
or some little markets, people like they carry international food, they don't have the artificial food dyes and it doesn't
Yeah.
have
I've seen that too. Yeah.
yeah. And so like, okay, we can chalk, that's a win clear right there.
Mhm.
And I think there's been a bunch of drama with the Casey Means nomination. I'm actually curious to your thoughts on that because you've seen people who are really supportive of it, and you've seen a lot of people in the alternative health sphere, the anti-jab sphere. Nicole Shanahan came out against it. And so there seems to be a lot of uproar about whether people feel that she's aligned with us or not. And I've only looked into it a little bit, and so it's curious because like I have been what I would say like in the health and fitness world for like 15 years, and not only that, but like what I would consider more like it's always like alternative. And so for someone to come up like her and her brother, I just never heard like for them to end up on Tucker
Yeah.
Carlson,
Yeah.
and I had never heard of them before. I'm just like, who is this? Like, how did they
Yeah.
get here?
Yeah.
And so,
I thought the same thing when they popped up on Tucker. I was like, who? Because, and I love, Tucker's show and everything. And I saw him come on. I'm like, and they were speaking for seed oils. And I'm like, I've never heard them speak about seed. I've never heard of them. There's a lot of people
yeah.
talking about seed oils. Never saw them.
And so, yeah,
So,
I'm very, I'm not really making any claims one way or the other, but I'm like very curious. And I mean, I'd say slightly suspicious about like who they are, where they come from, what their deal is, what their intentions are. And some people go a little over the top. It's like, oh, well, you're connected to this person. It's like, if you've ever, if you come from a good family, you will have met someone of certain status at some point. And then, like people always do that thing like with Elon, where it's like there's a picture with like Epstein or not
Yeah.
Epstein, Maxwell in the back. And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, they were at a party together,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying that like Elon is totally free from sin or anything, but it's just so I don't know. I don't want to like accuse him of something, but I feel like that's current drama, and I don't really know much of what else has been happening that we could consider a win in the Maha sphere. What do you think has
What do you
been?
think about like the FDA commissioner, Makari? You know him? Do you like him?
I don't feel like I really know much about him.
Yeah. Or I mean, you've got. I mean, the one I know is Jay Bhattacharya, and I think he's got a good head on his shoulders. A lot of people feel he wasn't as radical, in condemning the shots. Trump, for what I hear, tends to be um, still insistent on not wanting to acknowledge the reality of how
Yeah, I
awful the
mean
shots are,
that
and
that's Trump's personality,
yeah,
like there's even that clip from that movie about him, The Apprentice, where he says like you never ever admit that you were wrong. And
mhm,
it's like, look, if he knows that he was wrong,
yeah.
like it's for me it's more important that we get the result we want than just I need to hear him say that. Some people are really big stickler for that, but like if he knows and he's
I don't need
putting
him to say it. He could just easily, if unless there's something else there we don't know, but he could easily bundle that into the closest he's gone to saying I got something wrong, which is he said in my first term I didn't know anybody in DC.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
relied on
absolutely.
the experts and they gave me a bunch of garbage people and I had to go through them. So all he has to do, and he can throw this right at Mike Pence, his favorite failure. And he
Sure.
can say, Mike Pence was in charge of this. We put him in charge of the task force and he let us down just like he let us down on January 6th. He let us down over and over again. Mike Pence, what a loser.
I
That's
like
all
how
he's
you're
got to
doing
do.
your Trump impression while you're while you're
That's
doing
all he's
that.
got to do, and everybody's going to
Yeah.
be like, "Thank you." Now get these damn things out of our children. Like get this like thing off. Thank you, Mike Pence. Just throw it on Mike Pence. It makes sense if it's Mike Pence.
Well, look, I mean the again the that's a really big issue to a lot of people.
Yeah,
And a lot of people are kind of throwing a fit with this nomination because they don't feel like she's sufficiently on the right side of things. And so that'll be interesting. And then also like, I think clearing up the junk out of our food is going to be like a pretty clear, easy path. My concern is that like a lot of people are involved, whether it be the means is, whether it be RFK, and just kind of like the general, because has said so much himself that like they think sugar is poison.
yeah,
And here I am saying like sugar is like the best thing you could possibly
yeah. They're going to
consume.
come for it. Yeah, probably. Yeah,
I mean, like remember like New York instituted like the sugar tax or the soda tax or the big gulp tax, whatever they did. When I lived in Boulder, Colorado, there was a city-wide sugar tax. And so if I wanted a Coca-Cola and I went through the McDonald's drive-through, if I just drove like 5 minutes to the next town over, my soda was like 30 cents cheaper.
and that
Um,
makes a big difference when you're going through as much soda as you go through with your diet.
yeah, yeah.
That
So,
adds up just like gas.
well, I know I don't normally drink my sodas out if I'm trying to keep the price down. You
Yeah, I'm
can
teasing you, but
go to
no,
Costco and get a case.
no. I think the means brother and sister are anti-sugar from what I see, and
Yeah.
Kennedy seems to be against sugar. Um, I tried to push people, and I still am pushing people who are more open to the other approach. But again, I still have this ethical dilemma in my mind that again, and unless I mean we're trying to do this stuff in real time, if we have to find a blueprint that is mass person friendly to do a bioenergetic adjacent method of weight loss and other issues because you can't run it that way
Well, again, it's like, it's always interesting, like what you say that clicks with somebody. Like, okay, just don't eat carbs and that's your thing. You're right. That's super easy. I think if you give someone just one, the idea that on any given day, they can just eat nothing but fruit, like that, just like if someone just walks away from this and goes, I'm going to continue my normal diet, but on two separate days during the week, I will just eat nothing but fruit. I think that'll already start moving the needle in the right place.
Yeah. Um, uh, you've got the, I think the biggest thing I've tried to focus on is they need to go after seed oils, MAHA, and I'm hoping that Kennedy, by starting with the infant formula, and he's trying
That'll
to
be
clear
huge.
that up. If he clears out the seed oils or reduces them dramatically for the infant formula, that would give him a foundation to then go up the ladder and start hitting other foods, right? With
That's actually a great point. If he could just do nothing else besides make it illegal to put seed oils in formula,
that would be huge.
that would be massive because not only that, one, we'd be setting up all of our children for better
Yeah,
success for you'd be setting up the next generation, but you'd be getting into people's heads that
yeah.
seed oils are bad. And that would do a, if we're talking about these mimetic shifts on
Mhm.
a population-wide scale, that would be huge.
That that
I
that
was gonna
would
say, I wonder, this might be, this is more like USDA than him, but I wonder if we can get rid of these seed oil subsidies.
right. That would be
That'd
huge
drive it
too.
a lot. Yeah.
But see, he's not going to do that because he put Brooke Rollins there at
Yeah.
USDA, and she's a
Yeah.
total neocon, and she's just going to make sure that the
Well,
establishment's taken care of.
if
And
you saw
he
that
would
tweet,
he would lose so many big, like he would really put a lot of pressure on collapsing some of those Midwestern agricultural states
you would
to
lose
have
a
investment.
lot of donors there. But if you saw Nicole Shanahan's tweet about Casey Means, she was saying that she thinks someone that's not RFK and that is not Trump is like kind of running the show. I don't know.
Do you think it is?
I mean, I don't think I would know who it is.
Yeah.
But it seems like someone is trying to like reel this in. And it could just be like, look, there's just so much money against it that the pressure is so strong. I mean, you could just like throw out like, I don't know, is it a Bill Gates thing? I don't know. Is it some shadowy figure we don't know about? Like the question is if it's someone that we think that we would know who they are versus just like, these various the pharmaceutical companies, the
I was going to
agricultural
go down to
companies.
those big conglomerate groups like BlackRock and stuff that own so much shares in the drug companies and the food companies, and I don't know what kind of influence they have because you own a certain percentage of ownership of all these different assets that are predicated on us all staying sick. That's tough to take that whole thing on. It's gotta
Yeah.
ultimately. This is where we have to be Ron Paul. The market has to win this. Ron Paul's always right.
Well,
Sometimes
look,
sometimes the
RFK,
details are going to be a little bit fuzzy
look,
about how we get there, but the market's got to win.
the market didn't get rid of the artificial food dyes.
I know. I get that. I'm saying it's a but the market also is what allowed for Kennedy to have any kind of political movement in the first place,
Sure,
right?
if you consider the market to be like the
The
will of the
people's
people.
up, yeah, the
Yeah.
upswell demand of the people
Well,
that
so
chose.
what we want to do is we want to help bring the culture along to drive that, right? We want to make it more known. We do podcasts, we do media, we make
In
people
28, yeah,
know what health is,
in
and that's how we
2018,
get there.
yeah, in 2018, I was the only guy on major market FM, AM news talk radio talking to normies every day, 2017, 2018, about seed oils and politically contextualizing them as nobody did that. That was me. And I did that for years. And nope, Kennedy wasn't talking about seed oils, and I would have to list them all: cottonseed oil, canola oil. I did the whole thing, and I hit that Monday through Friday live on radio to major market stations like in Orlando and Tampa Bay and around the world. And I brought on Ray P and all those early, and I was bringing on a coalition of, and that's what has to happen is you have to build a coalition with the keto people, which is why I'm friends with a lot of those keto guys because they got on the seed oil thing. And
Well,
so
so
you need to draw,
that's
so you
where
have to scapegoat a common enemy, and we need to
that's where I
take out seed
think
oils, not
that's where I
sugar.
think it's important where this like alliance, so to speak,
Yeah,
is like we want like the junk out of our food. And
yeah,
it's like, look, we'll if you don't touch our sugar, we'll support you in getting all the seed oils, all the artificial dyes,
yeah,
all the crap, like, you know, um,
yeah.
and it's like I don't care if the person wants to eat keto. I think that some people might thrive on that? Yes, I do. I don't know what circumstances would lead someone to do that, but I firmly believe that it's possible that just some people are going to do better that way.
Mm-hmm.
And if we think of like this is what the greater movement is we want the junk out of our food.
Mm-hmm.
And like I'm sorry, but like cane sugar is not junk, it's just sugar. Like if they think, look at all the processed keto foods. They think that like, oh, we're going to use a tapioca starch or something, or we're using, some weird MCT. Like MCT oil is a processed food. If you want your MCT oil, we got to have our sugar. Like leave it at
Yeah.
that, and then we can all agree.
Yeah.
It's like
Don't touch. Yeah, you tell the keto guys, don't. We're not going to touch your butter and your bacon, and you
no,
don't
no, no. I
touch
mean,
this.
look, and that's the thing is like I eat all that stuff. I eat the saturated. I want the raw milk. I want the butter. I want the grass-fed meat. I want all that stuff. I want the organic produce,
And a
and
lot of
just
the a
like
lot of the low carb paleo people will be cool with fruit. They just don't like fruit juices. They don't like sodas. They don't like
Look,
candy.
there was I saw something that I In and Out. So I told you the pineapple. I'm sorry, the pink lemonade. They're gonna switch to from high fructose corn syrup ketchup to regular sugar
There you
ketchup.
go. Yeah.
So like
Have they switched out
uh,
their oil yet with their fries? They still seed
not
oil.
yet, not yet, not yet. At least I haven't seen anything about it. But
That's the
this is
big market to be in. If you can be getting into
this is
tallow
yeah, this is
distribution.
gonna be that's gonna be the tough part. But they have like a Simply Heinz. So there's a different brand within Heinz. They have a different version which has cane sugar. So like already we're. But then I saw on the comments on Twitter people saying, "Can we get one without sugar?" It's like, no, it's ketchup. Otherwise, it's just tomato paste.
Yeah, see, that's what's going to happen is that these industries are going to get kind of confused and exasperated because they're going to get, some people hitting them on, change out your oils, and then other people can be like, no, change out your sugars.
Well, look,
They're
that's why
like,
I'm doing everything I can to get ahead, get like on
I
top of
know,
this
I get that.
cultural thing, and I want people to like know what's
It's
healthy.
seed oil. We have to attack the seed oil. Be laser focused on that. That's it.
Yeah.
You hit that. If you kill that one, then everything
Because
else is.
think about what we were talking about earlier, that it's easy to avoid carbs, but it's hard to avoid fat. It's invisible, you can't see
That's
it.
right. Yeah.
It's really hard to avoid seed oils because everything is cooked in
Yeah.
it.
You don't know
If
what's
you
going
if you
on.
don't want sugar, don't eat the sugar. If you don't want
Yeah.
high fructose corn syrup, don't drink the soda.
And
Don't eat the ketchup.
the issue is, again, from the industry standpoint, there's simply not enough at this time, from what I understand, not enough alternatives to seed oil to like switch over the whole industry and the restaurant industry today in America. It's just, it needs to ramp up production. You need to have, you've got avocado oil, which I know people think is sketchy, but that's going to have to stand in the gap for some of this as a transition. You know what I mean? And like quality olive oil is sketchy again. There's like, people
So
have
yeah.
arguments about that, but you're going to have all oils on base or whatever. That whole saying is like everybody's got to get out here on deck and help to
Well,
like
look,
transition.
our government has paid farmers to do a bunch of
Yeah.
terrible things.
Yeah.
If we actually paid farmers to do, like, hey, you grow canola seed, and so, okay, we're now going to pay you if you convert it
The
to
thing is, man, it's like
cattle
at
farm.
some point you get that real politics. These are psychopaths that run these cartel mafia
Oh, I
groups in
know, I
power.
know.
So it's not just farmer bills. Oh, really? I could make
No, no,
money if I
no. Trust
did.
me, I
There's
know.
a
No, no.
psychopath running this.
There's this one seed oil shill online that I forget his name, but like me and my friends and stuff, we've gotten into spats with him over years and years. Where he's like he says that like glyphosate, he works for like he's on the board of like the seed oil
Yeah,
commission or something, and he's like a shill for
yeah.
Monsanto. And so we had some argument about raw milk, and I told him, okay, you're pro glyphosate, I'm pro raw milk. Here's a video of me drinking raw milk. Let me see your video of you drinking glyphosate.
Mhm, mhm.
Drink the
Yeah.
Roundup. I think his name is Kevin. I don't know what. And the hashtag was drink the Roundup, Kevin.
Well, if we can get Secretary Kennedy to go after anti-Israel sentiment, seed oils as much as just going after
With the same.
anti-Israel,
Yeah.
we will cure obesity in about 3 weeks.
Yeah. There we
You know what I
go.
mean? That's
Yeah.
he's like a dog on a bone on that one. If we can get him on that for seed oils with that level of passion, if we could just get one half the passion that he commits his Twitter feed to anti-Semitism, if we could get that committed to battling seed oils, we'll be
Hey,
all.
I will say, as a Jew, on behalf of the Jewish people, Kennedy, go put your energy
There you go. There
elsewhere.
you go. You should do a campaign. There you go. Because Israel, what is it? They have the highest concentration of seed oil. So you need to start a campaign that anti-Semitism.
It's because all the hummus. It's because all the
They
hummus.
eat like what's that called? That the Israel paradox. They eat the highest amount of
Yeah. So
polyunsaturated, and they have the highest heart attacks and stuff.
The French paradox is that they eat the highest amount of saturated fat and have the lowest heart disease, and the Israeli paradox is that they eat the highest amount of polyunsaturated fat and they have the
So
highest.
here it is, Josh. We found your duty to our nation. Start a campaign that combating anti-Semitism starts with combating seed oils. because seed oils
Amazing.
is the number one
Amazing.
driver killing Israelis right now. And to
And,
get that to Kennedy, he'll
and
stop that what today.
okay, but keep
Today.
in mind if I tell people that anti-seed oil is pro-Israel, a bunch of people are going to flip on seed oils.
Yeah, we got to get this. These messages have to be siloed behind the conversation, right? Behind the
Yeah,
scenes. Right?
yeah.
I appreciate your time, Josh. Hey, great talking to you. Tell us about your website or your Twitter or your podcast, whatever you want to share.
Yeah, I'm on all everything with at Josh Rayner Gold. Rayner spelled Rainer. That's my Twitter and Instagram handle. That's my YouTube URL. And my podcast is, you can find it on there. It's called Rayner Radio. You can find it on Spotify and Substack and all of the things.
What are you talking about there? Health? Or are you talking about politics? What?
Um, mostly health, but then there's also plenty of political element to it as well, and especially as health pertains to politics. And so MAHA stuff is super interesting to me, of course, and that's like a big part of it.
Have you read my piece for towards a rape? We need a repeat summer, which is my call for
I
metabolic
have
health
I have
care.
seen that. I have seen that, yeah. And lately I've just been on this like sugar diet kick on my YouTube. I'm talking a lot about that because I think that this is like an incredibly powerful tool to like cut through all the other health metabolic issues and like speed run it. I mean again, like I don't want to say that like we've like simplified down peating, I wouldn't need dare to do such a thing like that. I think we can speed run past a lot of the issues and then get people further along. Because the weight and the fat and the metabolic issue is just such a huge part of it for so many people.
Yeah, I appreciate your time, and you've offered a lot of food for thought. I want people to reach out to me and let me know how they go if they follow you or Anabology or these other people doing these types of sugar things, and see what their results are. So it's a whole new. We're building a whole new cultural framework. We don't have Tony the Tiger anymore. We have people like Josh.
And you, I'm very,
Yeah,
very
yeah.
grateful for you. And I think our network of people are gonna we really need to kind of, in a sense, do our part to drive this into a better place. And so, thank you for everything you do, and thank you for having me on.
I appreciate it. Take care.